If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome back to my coverage of the Kristin Smart trial. Heading towards the end of week number 7, Thursday, September 1st of 2022. Monterey County Courthouse, Salinas, California. Today's testimony is dedicated to the GPR review, which remember that's ground penetrating radar.
The Kristin Smart murder trial continues today with the prosecution calling to the stand once again an archaeologist who assisted with the excavation under the deck of Ruben Flores' Arroyo Grande home in March of 2021.
The findings were reviewed that Haynes had done. He had already presented yesterday about his search with his specialized equipment that located Kristin's, quote, clandestine grave, end quote. So today, Mrs. Arrington, who's his partner, now I have to apologize. I quoted her name as Harrington with an H yesterday because I was just going off of pronunciation. It's Arrington, starting with an A. So my apologies, ma'am, on that. So Mrs. Arrington is an archaeologist. She's been one for 30 years. She has a master's degree with an emphasis on human remains. She's done hundreds of excavations during her 30-year career. Her testimony began at 10:55 a.m., and she and her partner Haynes own a company called Natural Investigations, and they were hired by the SLO County Sheriff's Department to use their specialized GPR equipment and their expertise to decipher and review their findings. And they were breaking down what the GPR search results were in the 6x4 anomaly when they, fine-tuned it after all the grids and the searching. That was the, of course, target area and where the findings were under Ruben's deck. The prosecution asked Arrington about what she saw once excavation began. She answered saying she saw staining inconsistent with surrounding walls of the hole. Question: what did that signify to you? Answer: it signified a hole had been dug there previously. Question: did you review Haynes' GPR results? Answer: yes. Question: what did you see? Answer: an anomaly, a disturbance in the soil. Then she uses pictures to identify the location of the anomaly as grid 1, excavation number 2. She goes on to say staining should be a nice bowl shape, but wasn't because the soil had been disrupted. Question: how deep did you first see the staining? Answer: just above 2 feet. Question: was it consistent with other stains you've seen of human decomposition in the soil? Answer: yes, sir. There is so many questions in testimony today that I'm going to approach this a little bit differently and present it differently than usual. I'll be just reading the questions and the answers with less paraphrasing because I want to make sure we get all this information in. It was a lot. This lady was on the stand all day. So moving on, Prevel asked Arrington who dug the hole, and she said 2 SLO County Sheriff's officers did, and there was a picture published of that. We've seen that picture a lot already, but I guess that was the sheriffs digging up the anomaly. Prosecution asked, could you tell what tool was used to dig the hole? Answer: no. There were no mechanical marks. It was not machine dug, but dug by hand. Sanger objected, stating there's no scientific basis, which was overruled.
Paul's attorney, Robert Sanger, objected several times during the witness testimony. Each time, it was overruled.
The prosecution asked, did you see staining in the soil that appeared from human decomposition? Answer: yes, sir. And that's when the prosecution was able to publish the photos. And then Sanger's added again, quote, I think I know what pictures they are, but can I see them? Come on, just hold them up. Now, if I was a juror, I wouldn't be impressed. He's always throwing fits, while Misik seems practically ho-hum. And then Prevel is aggressive, but in a more gentle way. It's the best way I can explain it. I'm glad Denise left the courtroom early. This is really hard to hear. Arrington explains that irregular patterns with soil and darker spots shows fluids that have leaked into the soil slowly over time, not quickly, otherwise the lines would be thicker. Holy crap! Following that response, one of Paul's jurors began to loudly and uncontrollably sob. Judge O'Keefe excused everyone for early lunch. As the jurors left the courtroom, 3 additional jurors were wiping tears away, 2 women and 1 man. I only have access to the top of the staining spotted. Jurors saw pictures of deeper stains. If I were Paul, I would be pooping bricks.
Right before the lunch break during trial proceedings Thursday, a juror in Paul's jury started crying, causing Judge Jennifer O'Keefe to stop testimony and take lunch early.
After lunch, Judge O'Keefe reads the jurors' duties again and states, quote, "This has been a long and hard trial and can be quite emotional. Please don't hesitate to ask for a break if you need one by passing a note to the bailiff," end quote. Remember just a few episodes back when I was acknowledging how hard this must be for the jurors? Well, today, a juror was really struggling, and as you heard, 3 others were also crying, but just more softly. This disrupted the court, and the reading the judge did for the jurors is actually called an admonishment. An admonishment is a big word, and it means firm warning or reprimand. So the judge was reading the reminder to the jurors. It's hard not to lose control of your emotions. We're all human, and so was Kristin. I'm sure they were embarrassed for disrupting the court. And the topper is, you get in trouble for it with an admonishment. The duty of the judge is not to be cruel or cold, but to follow all the rules of the court, especially to protect from appeal, which are common. I have my doubts that Robert Sanger would go through this all again, especially when experts have estimated that it's costing a minimum of $500,000 for Paul's defense. Just Paul's defense, not including Reuben. And experts have hinted that Paul's home, which was titled in a trust around the time of his arrest, is what will pay for his defense. Let's manifest guilty verdicts for both of them, the maximum sentence for both, and no appeal. Luckily, winning an appeal in California is hard, but no one wants to go through this again. Once is enough. Continuing on, the prosecution asked Mrs. Arrington, "Before break, you said, staining began to appear around 2 feet. How far down did it go?" Answer, "A little further than 4 feet." Arrington further explained that the staining was interrupted previously because after it occurred, the soil was removed again. It is consistent with the hole being redug and something taken out. The prosecution asked, "Did you find bones?" Answer, "No." The next question was, "What conclusions can be drawn from that?" Sanger had another loud objection, saying it lacks scientific foundation, which was overruled, and Arrington answered, "The body was encapsulated in something, a coffin, a tarp, or a bag." When asked how soil was stained if a body was wrapped in something, Sanger objects, saying, "Hypothetical, calls for speculation, improper, no foundation." Wow, he had a lot of reasons there, but it was overruled. She answered, "It could be from punctures or tears or semi-permeable material." Then the prosecution said, "What's a bathtub ring in your field?" The answer is, "Similar to a dirt ring in a bathtub, as a body decomposes, it leaves a ring in the soil." The court is shown a vertical view of the stainage with bands of staining running horizontal where something was leaking into the soil all at once because it's not flooded. Next question. Was there any animal bones or carcasses found? No, sir. Did you find any primate bones or carcasses? Sanger, objection. Asked and answered. Overruled. Answer, no, sir. Then the prosecution said, "Any ferret bones or carcasses?" Answered, "No, sir, I did not." Prosecution asked if she smelled any diesel at the time, and she said no, there was no diesel odor. Arrington testified that no other human decomposition staining was found. And the prosecution asked if she returned on April of 2021. The answer was yes. And the prosecution asked her if she was able to confirm her previous conclusions. Objection! Overruled! Singer, objection! Overruled. Answer, yes, sir. Continuing on with more direct examination of Arrington, she explained stratigraphy, which is layers of archaeological remains, basically. The layers tell a story similar to Indiana Jones kind of stuff, and translates to crime scene forensics as well. Arrington shows examples of stratigraphy and pointed out this area has never been disturbed. Before showing the next slide, Arrington explains it lacks stratigraphy, as she mentioned in her testimony earlier. The staining had been interrupted because after it occurred, the soil had been removed again. It's consistent with the hole being redug and something taken out. Arrington explains the principle of lateral continuity for the jury. The layers are the same on both sides, deposited in a basin, and will be continuous end to end. Any breaks are due to erosion or deformation after deposition. The prosecution confirmed with Arrington that she used all industry standards during the excavation process. All right, we're finally to cross-examination. Some days it's hard to realize that we're finally to Sanger because he just sprinkles himself throughout. He's just objecting and carrying on all day. But anywho, I'm nicknaming him Mr. Aggressive for this episode. You know, I like to change up the nicknames. So he asked, quote, let's get right to this thing here. Where is this photo from? Arrington says, sir? Sanger says, the photo, where's it from? She answers, grid 1, excavation 2. Sanger asked about another area with root staining. And he says, you knew you were looking for a body, perhaps Kristin Smart, right? Answer, we were looking for soil anomalies, sir. Then he says, you didn't find a body, did you? And she answers, no, sir. Sanger then asks, usually you would find a skeleton or some remnants, right? Answer, if a body was placed directly in the ground with no wrapping, then Sanger says, that is the theory you came up with later. Prosecution objects, argumentative, which was sustained. Sanger then asks, you didn't find evidence, you were just brainstorming with Detective Cole. And she says, I wouldn't call it brainstorming. It is based on 30 years' experience. Those are my ideas, not speculation. It's experience. Ding! I love it when he's put in his place. Part of the deck was removed to reach further up the grid to allow access. Nothing further was found there. Sanger then asked, only a small part of your business is looking for human remains for forensic purposes, correct? Answer, yes. Sanger says, is it 5%? Answer, no, sir, more than that. Sanger asks for a break to locate pictures. He publishes several photos of the other excavations on the property in March of 2021, where there was no, I repeat, no evidence, and asked Arrington to review each picture and explain. As Sanger continues to look for the next photo, one of Reuben's jurors shook his head and rubs his forehead. Not a good sign for Sanger, in my opinion. Sanger should have gone without the pictures. It just got worse from there. Sanger asked, would liquid stain be intact if the area was dug up? Answer, sir, I believe this photo is the bottom of the excavation. Sanger, you've never heard of a body totally decomposing so that nothing is left behind, right? Answer, if the body is not encapsulated in anything, that would be correct. Sanger, you haven't studied tarps, right? Answer, no, sir. Sanger, he asked about the substantial odor for people living there. Answer, it's subjective. If it's shallow and not wrapped, then yes.
During Sanger's cross-examination of Arrington in the afternoon, Sanger brought into question comments Arrington had made to law enforcement following the excavation about what the staining could have been. Sanger asked if she had mentioned to investigators that the stains could have been caused by roots. Arrington responded that they could have been roots, human or animal. She then said, quote, "I would say it's organic material."
Arrington goes on to confirm there were not any fibers or pieces of fabric found in the site, something like a tarp that a body could have been wrapped in. She further explained that tarps are not organic material and decompose at a much slower rate than organic material. Okay, let's unpack this and my interpretation of this. This all gets my wheels turning, so sorry, just bear with me. First of all, I'm curious why no mention here at all of the clothing fibers we've been told were found in the hole. Now, this is pure speculation on my part, but could it be those fibers were discovered at the lab, or we're going to wait until the lab discusses their findings? I don't know. I did personally see law enforcement with those sifting screens in the avocado orchard that day. We will just have to wait and see on that, I guess. And in my opinion, let's say Kristin was in a tarp. She would decompose, causing the leakage and the stainage. But when those effing monsters dug her up, they would have just snatched her back out of there, still wrapped in the tarp, explaining this testimony. And like I said, this is just my opinion, and I feel gross even breaking this down or repeating this, but it's the ugly truth that the Flores family has basically left behind, the aftermath that everybody else has to deal with. At 4:14 p.m., Sanger checked the clock, and court ends at 4:30, and he says, quote, "I want to finish so we can get this witness off the stand," end quote. And Arrington says, "Thank you." And even the jurors laughed at that one.
Sanger asked how many times Arrington's company had used ground-penetrating radar in cases prior to the dig in the Flores backyard, and she said it was only a small percentage.
Sanger silently shuffles through his papers for a few minutes and then ultimately says, "No further questions." Oh goodness, check this out. Judge called for a sidebar and Sanger had a hot mic in the hallway. So the bailiff had to run out to inform him as the jurors actually started humming to try to drown out the sound. Oh my gosh, that's comedy. And in the court, you could hear Sanger say, quote, "That's not mine." "Oh, it's mine," end quote. Darn, that could have been fun.
In other news this evening, the Kristin Smart murder trial continued today.
And now we hear from Mr. Misick as he cross-examines Arrington. Question: a bathtub stain is level. That's not a bathtub stain, is it? Answer: the topography is slanted, sir. Arrington disagrees with Misick about diesel fuel being an explanation since it has a strong odor and distinct color, which neither of those she noticed. It's established that the soil in the avocado orchard is clay, sand, and silt. Answer: it would still have stratigraphy. Arlington explains that part of California wouldn't have seen that type of flooding. Oh, brother. Do these attorneys even do their research? He goes on to challenge Arrington about working with William Bass at the Tennessee Body Farm. Misick says Dr. Arpad Vass runs it, and Arrington educates Misick and informs him that it was Bass who created the body farm. As usual, Misick was not cross-examining for very long. The prosecution now returns for redirect. He says, the defense mentioned the possibility of builder trenches, but you didn't get a chance to explain that. Please explain. Objection! By Sanger, of course. And he says, she didn't get a chance to explain. Overruled. Answer, builder trenches would be linear, but the anomaly was not linear. Jury question, jury question. Question, can you tell the difference between human versus animal stain? Answer, not always visually. The lab would have to do a chemical analysis. Second question, what's the difference in the lines in the soil between excavation number 1 and 2? Answer, excavation number 1, the lines are very fine and in very small areas. And in 2, the lines were quite extensive, 6 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet. Next question, did you see plumbing problems? Answer, no, that would be more of a splatter. Question, from the jury still, can you rule out plumbing because the stain didn't start till 2 feet down? Answer, yes. With my experience, I would rule that out. The prosecution continues with re-examination. Question, are decomposition stains always a good sign of a burial? Sanger, objection! And before he can even give his reason for the objection, the judge interrupts and overrules. The answer is yes, you would not have a burial without a decomposition stain. Another jury question. When bodies are buried, do fluids travel up or down? Answer, gravity would influence staining to go down. Prosecution asks, to the sides as well? The answer is, if the topography is slanted, yes. Gravity. I thought that was common knowledge. Sanger finally had 2 objections in a row sustained when prosecution asked if Arrington observed staining that looked like an arm and a hand. Oh my gosh. Objection calls for speculation, sustained. Prosecution rephrased the question. Did you see any staining that looked like a body part? Before she can answer, dang it, Sanger objects again on speculation, which was also sustained. Wow, that's so telling to me and devastating. Do you guys agree? Arrington was excused at 4:32 p.m. Judge O'Keefe said they'd be back at 8:30 Friday morning, and they will be out early Friday at noon. Quote, in case you are wondering, we are still moving ahead of schedule.
Witness testimony is scheduled to continue Friday morning.
As always, justice for Kristin.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still